It is Saturday, April 13. I'm joined by DMAC and Matty G. Tonight we're going to have a look at some per game versus total game players this season. Were they a bust? We'll talk about it. We'll also look at some silly season winners, project out whether they might have value next season. This is Fantasy Basketball International. This is Balls Deep.
I'm the type to get shit done. You the type to observe. March Madness on my speakers, but today's November 23rd. Got something loud in the blunt, yeah. I don't say what I want, yeah. Probably somewhere sunny getting tan. Foreign women in the sun, yeah. That's all that I need. That's all that I need. That's all that I need. Got my brothers with me. Got my brothers with me, and my mama's healthy. That's all that I need.
Welcome to the Balls Deep podcast, part of the Fantasy Basketball International podcast network. While we're on the topic of Balls Deep and while we're on the topic of balls, tonight's episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below the waist grooming. Shaving your jewels doesn't have to be risky business anymore thanks to the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. This trimmer is all about keeping things smooth and safe so you can trim with confidence. Treat your wrinkleberries and join the 10 million worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com to get 20% off plus free shipping with the code FBI. Let me bring in the lads, because on the topic of Manscaped, look, I'm going to move my little rocket here just so we can see Matty G's nice hair. While we're on the topic of Manscaped, Matty and DMAC, are you manscapers? Let me know.
Have you seen his face? Look at his face. He's not. He is the absolute picture of manscaping.
He is, and look, the manscaper, the lawnmower is a body groomer as well. So you could just smarten up that mow there. We know that the wife enjoys your facial hair, and maybe she'd enjoy some grooming down there as well. I have trialed it. I will say, last time we did this show,
did you get to?
I've had a little play around.
You got a sample.
No photos, no evidence. You just have to take my word for it. But I think it did the job. It worked. As far as I'm aware, I have nothing to.
You've got a smile. You've got a smile on your face, which means this ultimately led to sex. So congratulations, and I think
it is the Balls Deep podcast. So
I think at the end of the day, all we always want is just to feel and look good all over, so we can get the job done. And well done to you, sir.
And Kingy, I think that's the perfect ad as well. I think you've done well with the Manscaped. Perfect ad. Happy man. Everyone's happy.
So we'll jump into the fantasy then. But before we do, 20% off and free shipping if you use the code FBI at manscaped.com. 20% off. And they already have some good prices, honestly, some good packs there. Free shipping with the code FBI at manscaped.com. Show your balls some love and feel free as a dove. There you go. There's a nice catchphrase for us. Boys, good to have you on. Thank you. We're like two nights late. We usually do this on a Thursday. Something happened on Thursday. I don't know. I can't remember why. Then my computer shut itself. I was sick. That's right. I was sick.
You're not feeling very good.
Then my computer shut itself, and it is still not functioning at 100%. So I'm hoping that it holds together for the next few days. I think we're just going to have to go and buy a new computer, actually. So that's unfortunate. But I think we have had this one for, I think it's 5 years. That feels like a pretty good life for a computer nowadays. I don't know.
You're due.
Yeah. I know zero about computers and IT. So, we've had a good run. So, but how have you been? Dan, haven't had you on for a little while. How are things?
Yeah, been busy just with, I guess, normal life outside of fantasy. And I know a lot of people have finished their leagues already, but some have still stuck with us as well. So I've still continued on with our Between Two Hoops podcast with Kayla as well. But yeah, one more game day left in the fantasy season for those that still have leagues still going.
And Matty, I mean, I was on a show with you this morning, so I know exactly what you've been doing. But how are things in your world?
Yeah, things are really good. I'm on holidays now for the next 2 weeks. So I am living I can actually just chill out for a hot second. I think it's been a heck of a season, like D-Mac said. If you're still going, and you're in a league, get the fuck out of it next year. You don't want to be running into the dark days of week 24 in your NBA fantasy season. Like this is, I think we saw today, I saw it after our podcast, funnily enough, that the Bleacher Report notification came up of something about the Grizzlies had, whatever it was 13 people on it was like the record for injury list players. This is what we deal with at this time of the year. And so, look, it's good to just be watching basketball the last couple of weeks and enjoying it, but we're still going to the depth. We've got one more podcast. But, boys, it changes. How do you feel about it, actually, Kingy? This is like content changes, life changes. This is, D-Mac said, one more day.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, one more day of games, and then we're into the play-in tournament, then the playoffs, and I mean there are still fantasy leagues available. So we're running quite a few playoff leagues this year. So there is still fantasy out there for those of you that for some reason haven't had enough. For all the diehards, let's go out and say that Matt Carmody might be one of those.
Matty Carmody would be in it. Carmody, he's a legend.
So he could very well be in a playoff league. But yeah, there are some there. And yeah, look, I think this time of year is just a time to probably reflect a little bit, which is what we'll be doing tonight. Looking back at the season, I'll be going through some of the stuff that we did at the beginning of the season, having a look at who each of the analysts had as breakouts, and let's have a look at who hit and who didn't hit. Having a look at preseason ranks, that sort of thing. So it is a good time to look back and just do a bit of research, reverse research, I suppose, and see what we were right about and what we were wrong about, starting with tonight. So, yeah, we've got a couple of good topics for tonight. And I'll just say, I know we only do have one game day left, which is not tomorrow, some reason day off tomorrow. And then all teams play on that last day. There's quite a few interesting matchups on that last day.
It's going to be blind. What a day.
It's going
what
to be
a day to watch. I'm just going to take the day just to flick between every single game and watch the most I can, because D-Mac, I think you love this as well. Like, this is where fantasy is just out of it, and being a fan of basketball is great. Seeing which team is going to get which seeding, especially with the play-in, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, there's so much going on, and I actually am still in a league, so I'm really nervous about that last day as well. And I know games start at 1 a.m, so I'll be staying up till 1 a.m. just to make sure that I've got enough guys filling my roster spots as well, because anything can happen that last day. And Kenneth Lofton, he's come back as well, 2 years in a row. Final days of the season, become a bit of a silly season legend once again. So anything can happen.
What is that league like for you? Can I just ask, like being in week 24, what is that like grinding? Is this a championship week for you?
It is championship week. It was a 2-week playoff matchup in the grand final. I should, on paper, comfortably win, but anything can happen on that last day. I'm even considering sitting guys down and just playing for that. It's an 11 category league as well. It's a keeper league. It's all sorts of crazy, but just playing into the final week and the final day, it's pretty insane. So we'll have to have some strong words with Commissioner Pato if he's watching, but crazy.
Strongest words, D-Mac.
Yeah, certainly some wacky box scores and lineups and all sorts of things happening at the moment. But there were a few good games today. I mean, we spoke about them on the show this morning over on Insight, and the games we thought would be competitive were competitive.
We hit it on the money with that one today. Can I just talk about the money? And I'm okay to say this. You know how we put together a multi-bet every week live on the show, D-Mac? We knocked it absolutely mostly out of the park today, and then we didn't.
Mostly so it was because Jabari Walker got injured.
Oh, last leg.
No. The worst one was Victor Wembanyama got 2 blocks instead of 3.
2 blocks,
2 blocks instead of 3. And then the rest of the shenanigans happened. DeAndre Ayton went down. Jabari Walker went down. And the Clippers lost.
Yeah.
Which we didn't – to Utah.
Kenneth Lofton.
Kenneth Lofton. That's what brought it to mind.
But did you look at the Clippers box score? It was so I wasn't. I mean, there was so much happening, so I wasn't watching the game live. But I checked the box scores afterwards, And then I saw like Dallas obviously rested Luka and Kyrie.
Yep.
So they obviously weren't sort of trying. The Clippers rolled out all their starters. And then as soon as they saw that Dallas were just done, all their starters came off.
I was screaming at my screen. I saw James Harden, who's in my team in this championship league.
Yep.
Solid start, first quarter, 5 assists, beautiful. And then played 10 minutes and that was it.
Yep.
Crazy.
It was absolute. This is the chicanery. I'm just going to, can I add him on X right now and be like, can I get a live response from your commissioner? Be like, hey, what are you doing running a league into week 24? Because this is the chicanery that you can get. Who thought Kenneth Lofton Jr. today was going to put up a nigh-on triple-double off the bench in 35 minutes and go 10 from 16?
Yeah.
Well, he's done it before. He did it this time.
Someone would have.
Someone would have and won a shitload of money, but 0 from 5 from 3. He actually is usually good for a couple, to be fair, on Kenny Lofton. He's actually got a nice stroke, so that's bad. The man could have dropped a bloody 30 piece and put up a triple double today.
He could have, but anyway, we digress. We're talking too much about crap players and weird lineups. So our 2 topics tonight touched on this coming into the show. The first one is, and I don't know why I came up with this topic, but I just thought it might be interesting to look at players per game value versus their total game value this season. So these are guys that I went through the rankings, and they're just players that I think if you were speaking about them in a broad sense, you'd say they were probably not necessarily a bust, but they underperformed this year if we compare their per game rank to their ADP, where they were going in drafts. But if you then go and look at their total value, maybe that's not the case. Maybe they were close to hitting value. First guy I want to start with is, now I came up with like 6 or 7 names. I don't know whether you boys came up with 7. A few names of your own. So we'll just sort of fly through them quickly and give both their ranks, and then just quickly 30 seconds on whether we think they were a bust or not this season. First one I came up with Anthony Edwards. And I think this is going to be the case again next year. He was going borderline first round, I want to say, sort of in the low teens, which I think even most analysts thought that was a bit high. The sort of the upside is there, but we hadn't seen it before. So I'll say that his ADP was sort of middle of the second round. He's the 37th ranked player, which is only 20 spots roughly. But when you're up at this pointy end of the player ranks, 20 is quite significant. 37th ranked player per game. But if you look at him total value, he's the 19th ranked player, which is close to bang on where you were drafting him. So do you think he's been a bust? And based on this, do we think that people are still going to be confident in taking him in that range next year?
Yeah, Kingy, I think, and we've done some mock drafts already for next season, and people have already suggested that he deserves to be considered in the first round, which I think is far too rich for my liking, even based on, I think so. They've been having too much of that good stuff. It's 37th per game. It's insane. It's insane. But he's the face of the NBA, or be one of the faces of the NBA. He's going to, we think he's going to be quite durable. But again, you can never predict those types of things. But to be considered for the first round or even early second round, I think that's just, again, too much. And he has improved. His efficiency, his shot efficiency is much improved this season compared to previous seasons. And where else is he going to get that boost? Perhaps points per game, he's just going to be the man, and he practically is the man. But is he going to take that step up? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Look, I think for me, I have a strict policy for some things. We have these tenured rules in fantasy, or our own tenured approaches for how we approach the question of whether someone's a boom or bust. I think this one is one of the ones that really comes in between the values of per game and total game. I think at the end, I'll give my general rule. But I think with where he was going, I always thought that Anthony Edwards was going too high. There was this premise. He was like this quote unquote breakout, but you can't be a breakout when you're already that good. In a way, we already know who you are. You're not moving in from top 120th value into the top 50 this year. So I see him being a second round player. third-round player in drafts, and I don't think you're going to be getting him anywhere outside the top 2 or 3, which is pretty much where he's been bang on. So I'd say he's like, look, and what he's been doing the past couple of months as well, if we look at it, he's been great. Obviously filling up the slack in Minnesota. So I'm quite comfortable with where he's finished the season for both of them. But again, if you were spending a first-round pick on him, not really great. But if you're mid to second round, you won't complain for someone who's total game 19th and 37th overall.
Yeah, I think I'd be comfortable. Around that 20 mark is probably somewhere I'd like to get him next season. I think he'll go higher than that in some leagues, but if he's available back end of the second round, I'd be pretty comfortable taking him there. Next guy I came up with was Miles Turner. So he is per game, he is the 58th ranked player. Total, he's the 40th. So not a huge difference, but he was someone that was probably going around that pick 40, I feel like. And so if you're, again, looking at his per game numbers, you're probably thinking he's a bit of a letdown here. But I actually think he's probably been okay this season. I don't think, even though he was probably going higher than where he's finished per game, I'm actually okay with his season this year and how he's performed, and I don't really view him as a bust.
Do you want to go, D-Mac?
Yeah, I don't think he's a bust either, but then again, people were taking him, it wasn't that long ago, people were looking at taking him in the third round. You look at those blocks numbers, that's fantastic blocks numbers. He can win your blocks by himself. That's just not the case anymore with so many guys that can provide elite blocks or really good blocks, and then you have someone who could win you a category by themselves in Wemby. For me, his value has diminished. So I don't think, although he's not a bust, I don't think I'm picking him anywhere in the top probably 4 rounds next season. I just don't think he has that overall value that you need to really worry about in that first 4 rounds.
Yeah, I see. And this is the weird thing as well. Miles Turner was one of the guys that caught my eye at the beginning of the season, depending on what faculty you drafted him in. So I did some research, and on RotoWire, his average draft position on ESPN was 82nd. On Yahoo, it was 37.5, which is wildly different in the rounds value. Like, this is something when you look at the ADP info, it's like, wait a second, some guy's going 38 on average in Yahoo. But on ESPN, he was 82nd, CBS at 72nd, and Fantrax at 42nd. So his average worked out to be about 68. So on that, it's probably around ballpark again with where he finishes up. So if you look at his between Fantrax at 42nd and Yahoo, 1 round value, you don't really mind that so much. Not like some other guys you've got on the list who are really well outside their ADPs, Kingy.
Yeah, and I'm just going off on a tangent here, actually. I'm just looking at block numbers for the season. And I remember coming into the year, we did a few pods and I was on some shows and we were talking about, because with Wemby coming in and Chet and everyone was sort of talking about Jaren Jackson and his block numbers, we were actually floating the idea of, or the concept of, hey, how many guys could average close to 2 blocks a year this season? And we came up with a list of about, I want to say 12 to 15 players who could potentially get to that number. And so we're actually, I mean, we've got, a game to go, but for all intents and purposes, we're at the end of the season. And so we've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players this season, averaged at least 2. And then we had...
And Turner doesn't make that list either.
He does not make that list, no. Jaren Jackson doesn't make that list.
Doesn't make it.
So... it's just interesting. And some of the guys that are there, I think all of the ones that are in that list, we had them in the list. So there's no real surprises in terms of who's in the list. But yeah, some names that didn't get there. Jaren Jackson and Miles Turner are the 2 obvious ones. Jakob Poeltl, I mean, I feel like he didn't even play this year. I know he did, but it just feels like he's been out forever.
And then he sucked at the beginning of the season and that dragged him down. And that was just interesting. Obviously, Wemby is way ahead. He's at 3.6 and next best is 2.4. And as we know with fantasy values and Z scores and all of that sort of stuff, you have one guy that's way ahead. It skews everyone. So it actually makes that category larger. And I think that's going to be the case. Like, I don't see Wemby averaging less than 3 blocks next year. No.
It'll be closer to 4, I think.
Yeah.
Of course, he didn't get 3 today, but that's all right.
Don't start me. Don't start. Don't.
No, we won't.
It's okay. We'll blame the Clippers for that one.
Yeah, all right, let's do that. Pascal Siakam is the next one. Let me just have a look at.
Let me. I've got him up at per for 9cat at 77, total at 48, and his ADP was 27. So this is an unmitigated disaster. So for my mind, this is the first one that is an egregious no. He sucked. He wasn't returning value, and you were kicking yourself for drafting him when you drafted him. If his average draft is about 27, and then he averages 2 back from that, you're feeling disappointed that you took him this high.
Yeah, he wasn't actually anyone I drafted this year. Last year I did. This year I didn't because he was going too high. So I just didn't bother. I was rather in that range. I was much more comfortable taking Kristaps Porzingis, for example. I remember I had those 2 on the board, and I went with Porzingis everywhere, and I'm pretty happy that I did. Obviously we didn't see the trade coming, so that had a bit of an impact on his value. But what do you think, D-Mac? Is he someone that we can say he was a bust this season?
I think so. And coming into draft season, he was just going far too high for my liking. That ADP, knowing that Scotty Barnes was going to be the guy that cleared out the team, Scotty Barnes was going to lead. And even though Scotty Barnes is not a high usage player, we knew that a lot of stuff would still go through him and Pascal Siakam would drop off. Since the trade as well, to Indiana, he still hasn't been the Siakam of old. And I don't know if he picks that up next season. And again, I still think there are some holes in his fantasy game. And we've seen maybe one really elite season, but I don't think he's consistent enough for myself. And I know that my co-host, Kayla, is really big on him for next season. I think she picked him up.
Pascal,
Loves Pascal, loves the Toronto or ex-Toronto guys, but I think she's quite high on him for next season. I'm not quite there. What about you guys?
Yeah.
I don't know. He feels like, to me, he feels a little bit like a Bam Adebayo. So someone who I think whose production went up quite quickly initially. Like that first 2, like we saw all this raw potential. They hit that sort of ceiling quite quickly, and now they've just plateaued a bit. And I feel like both of those guys have potentially, they're as good as they're ever going to be in terms of fantasy. I don't know. They're both very good, but I'm just not sure there's room for improvement. I could be
not in this Indiana,
wrong, of course,
but not in this Indiana side at the same time. Like you look at the way that the team is built, the way that they use the fast-paced and like highly potent offense they love to run through Tyrese Halliburton, and this isn't exactly conducive for Pascal's game. Like he is good on the block, he is good in the post, and he can slow down the pace quite well. He does play at a quickened pace, I guess, for a stretch big man, if you will. But I just don't see him and Miles Turner and Naismith and Nembhard and Tyrese Halliburton and all of those weapons together. I think you hit it on the head. Like this is pretty much where he's going to be when he's in this team.
Yep. Next guy. Now this will be on everyone's list of busts. Mikal Bridges. Now, speaking of players that were going too high, he was probably top of that list.
ADP of 25.
Yes.
Beats Pascal by 2.
Per game this season, 89th. Total value, 55th. Now, we know that he's renowned for not missing a game, and he'll definitely play on that last day, but he'll probably play 3 minutes. So... Again, not a player that I had nowhere this season. I just wasn't touching him because he was going way too high. I probably would have considered him pick 40 around that range, sort of 4th round maybe, but he was gone in every league. And I think he's one of the big question marks for next season because he's definitely underperformed. The Nets are terrible. He's obviously he's not a guy that you can build around in terms of building a championship franchise. So what happens next season and where do we think he goes? I'm assuming both of you agree that he was a bust.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. In a lot of leagues that I was in with mocks and real drafts, he was going in the middle of the second. And I preach, and I said, no, do not do that. Yes, he looked fantastic at the end of last season, but we knew that efficiency wasn't going to maintain just with extra usage. That wasn't going to maintain. A few guns coming back for the Nets as well. And like you said, Kingy, I don't think he's going to be a franchise cornerstone for the time being. And non-fantasy related, I think the Nets really dropped the ball on that one. And I think they had an opportunity to get at least 2, maybe 3 first-round picks for McCall at the end of last season. They're probably looking at that going, we probably should have taken that trade.
Yeah. Matty, your thoughts?
I'm actually on the trade machine right now because this is the first time that I'm literally on the ESPN's trade machine that you said that, because you said, where could he go next year? And I'm like, okay, so what team in my mind needs this guy? I would love to see Mikal Bridges on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah. I think there'd be a lot of teams that would like to have him.
I think so. And it's for my mind, if you could package someone like, you're not getting anyone away with it. If you could package some draft picks in the way and some extra cash off there, you could literally get away with like this whole Donovan Mitchell trade. You know, you could get some first round picks, and we all know that Donovan Mitchell might not be long for Cleveland next year. And let's just say you keep Darius Garland as your starting point guard. Could you imagine that back line of Mikal Bridges back into his Phoenix Suns role, good wing defender, 3-and-D type spot up shooter, where he's developed and shown that game from? I would love actually to see Mikal Bridges in Cleveland. I think he's the perfect fit there in that team. I think that's what they need instead of Karis LeVert running out there and doing it. And yeah, I'd love to see him there. And we all know the talk out of Donovan Mitchell out of Cleveland. But for me, that's where I'd love to see him go, where he's not the focus of the offense anymore. And I know that might be a bit of a hot take. I would just love Mikal Bridges in Cleveland. I think he would fit perfectly there.
Yeah, I think he definitely has to go back to being option 2 or 3 on offense. So this next guy, and another one he's a bust. I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me. Jordan Poole.
Cool.
Very rough to start the season. ADP of, I don't know,
42.
you tell me. But
42. I did 42. The deep dive. It's 42.
And I actually think this one is a little bit different to the Bridges one in that I do think quite a lot of analysts bought into the hype a little bit with Jordan Poole, myself included. I think probably not 40. I don't think I was quite that high, but I was okay taking him at around pick 50 to 60. The writing was on the wall for what he could do and what we thought he would do. And honestly, what he has done over the last month in Washington, it's just those first 4 months were absolutely terrible. So 134th on the season per game, 88th total. So that's better. 88th is better. Like if you manage to get him at 60, for example, and he's the 90th ranked player in totals, that's not terrible. The downside is you probably dropped him at some point during the season and someone else picked him up anyway. So did either of you guys have Poole this year?
I had Poole, and I was one, again, like you, Kingy, to buy into it. I just saw that opportunity coming out of the Warriors. I thought it was just onwards and upwards for him. But you just look at the last month, and is that just a glimpse into what he can provide into next season? Or is this just going to be another tease for all of us and going, you know what, he was the 66th ranked player over the last month of the season. Let's get him in. Let's do it round 5. He's going to improve, but who knows what's going to happen next season with the squad and just the makeup of that as well. There's a lot of things to happen.
Yeah. No, yeah, I was just never there on Poole. I saw the potential for points, but his game has just always been hollow outside that for me. So I think the most tantalizing thing was the fact that he'd be able to score on a team that needed it. But then again, it's a team that needs it, which means they're not good. And then he's just shown not to be very good this year. The past month, he's been better, but still, people were wasting like draft picks on him, trying to like just chomping at the bit, just seeing Jordan Poole come up in their draft line, like, I'm going to get him.
Yeah.
And then it just has not returned that for a lot of guys. I was just going to say the tantalizing thing about him was perhaps playing more at the 1, but we saw Tyus Jones really take control of that, and we were hoping for more assists out of Poole, and it just never came. And then the shot wasn't falling.
you're not going to get steals or blocks out of him. And of course, the field goal percentage is volatile at best.
Yeah, and I think he's one of these players where points, like these guys that could theoretically average 22, 24, 26 points a game are always going to get a bit of buzz about them. And he was one of those because fantasy managers tend to gravitate towards those high-scoring players. But if we, as you said, if we look at his numbers over the final, 2 months, month, he was over 20 points, so 21 and a half points, 6 to 7 assists, 1 steal, 3 threes. Field goal percentage, no one cares, but he's like over 90 from the line, and this is what we thought he'd do. But as you said, Tyus Jones took a lot of that ball facilitating sort of role off of him, but then we saw Tyus Jones sat a lot of those games over the last month, and Jordan Poole took over the ball handling. And so I think coming into next season, it will depend on what Washington's roster looks like. If it looks like there's a path to more minutes at the 1 for Poole, then maybe we buy back in to some degree. But he's certainly not going as high as he was this year. I think maybe around pick 100 he might go.
Can you even compare it to last season? And his usage coming off the bench was 29. His usage this season for the Wizards is 25. And again, that could be partly due to Tyus Jones, but also just he wasn't commanding his shot. He just wasn't the man. He should have been the man. He just wasn't the man. And
he was actually taking you're so right, D-Mac. He was actually taking less shots per game this year. In fact, this year he averaged 15.2 shot attempts a game. Last year he averaged 15.6 off the bench in Golden State. So this is the problem. The efficiency was so bad this year. Last year in the same, basically, let's just say they're carbon copied seasons by 0.4 of a shot attempt. His field goal percentage last year was 430, and this year it was 413. So it's dropped you down into the low 400s. And on that volume, he actually got pretty much the same amount of assists this year than he did last year, 4.4 to 4.5. And he got more steals than anything. Funnily enough, he got a steal a game on the season. So yay you, Jordan. But everything was down for the guy. His 3-point percentage was down. His 3-point makes was down from 2.6 to 2.4. His points were down from 20.4 last year to 17.4. That's 1 3 a game, not falling. And that's a pretty, but this just shows you if he is given the opportunity, can he actually take it by the manscaped nuts and by the dingleberries, as you like to say there, Kingy? There's for your sponsor. Can he take it by his manscaped ball sack and do something with it? And I just don't know if he's that guy. I think he's the guy who likes a moment and likes to stand in the limelight, but I just don't know if he can be the show.
What's it down to? Because you think, all right, he's coming off the bench at the Warriors. You've got people like Steph and Clay to back you up. All else fails, it's fine. These superstars will take over. You don't have that luxury on your new team. No. You're the guy. If all things fail, you're going to cop it from the fans, the media and whatnot. His confidence was low. And you saw when he had those first few photo shoots, he didn't want to be there. And I don't know if things have changed.
He looked so sad. He looked so sad.
He did, and I don't blame him. I mean, Washington are a train wreck. So going from a team like Golden State to Washington, it's a huge change in culture and all sorts of things. But anyway,
happy to be away from Draymond, but sad to be away from the rest of the crew.
I would say so. Last guy I've got, and then we'll jump into yours quickly, and we'll just do this one quickly because I think there's a reason for this one. So it's Josh Giddey. His ADP was around 60, I want to say. 62 Yahoo.
56 overall between Fantrax, Yahoo, and CBS.
So 56 and where are we? 143rd for the season. Totals 99. So he's basically bang on 100. If we look at his numbers over the last month, though, 83rd, which I think is a better reflection. And we touched on him a little bit on our show this morning about there's a pretty obvious reason here as to why he was underperforming for the first 2 to 3 months of the season. And that was all that off-court stuff that was happening. While he did a really good job of not showing that it was impacting him, it had to have been, I think, playing on his mind And I mean, he's a young kid. You have to remember how young he is, and dealing with all of this when you're in the spotlight had to be hard. So I think we've seen over the last month probably what we were expecting to see for the majority of the season. And the numbers over the past month, 16.3 points, 7.7 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 0.5 steals, 0.7 blocks. Doesn't really get a lot of those. But 1.3 threes is interesting to me. I like that he's, despite the fact that there was that clip from earlier in the season, that viral clip of the teams basically just not even bothering to guard him. But he didn't let that deter him. He stuck with it and improved his 3-point shooting across the season. And he's not a reliable threat now, but he's a threat at least. Not like Ben Simmons going, we won't go down that path, but like a Ben Simmons who hasn't even added that to his game or threatened to add it to his game. I really like that Giddey was able to work through those struggles and come out the other end looking like the player we thought he might be. So I guess looking to next season, are we confident that he can be the player we've seen in the last month, or is he destined to be a top 100, top 120 player?
Kingy, I think the latter. He needs to be respected. He's got the 3 ball that it needs to be respected. The Thunder did well by him, and they brought in a shooting coach to help him out, and that bodes well for the Olympics. And obviously, we're going to be following Boomers intently. Yep. For me, he's just right now. He's still got too many holes in his fantasy game in a category sense. I think he's a lot more valuable in a points league, absolutely. But while the show is being run by Shea, J-Dub, those two are really going to take a lot of the brunt. Of course, Chet as well. I don't know if Giddey's going to be able to reach that top 50 in a category sense. And for me, he's just not one of my guys. I would not be drafting him for. I know there's still a lot of hype around him, but I don't think I'll be drafting him in many places next season.
If he falls, he'll be on my radar, only to get those assists and those rebounds and a dribble of points, even though, again, a dribble of points this season. He has been better the last month, and I think we all like it. I think in the international games before the season started, you could just see that his shot wasn't confident. And I think he knew, and this is the thing, we knew what was going on. Josh knew what was going on off the court before we ever did as a general public. Yeah. So this was obviously eating into him. You saw his confidence. You could see him physically rattled. And you could also tell he's like this baby-faced assassin guy. And I know this is a weird thing, but if you just look at his little baby peach fuzz 3-day growth kind of thing kicking in. This is a young guy. And if you ever see those young guys, the home in the hood memes, they've always got these patchy. You can see around the World Cup time and leading into that, he just didn't look himself. He looked a little bit out of, and so it obviously carried through. I have faith in Josh Giddey, again, being a player, but one that I want to pick up if he falls. And I think, D-Mac, you hit it on the head. He does have some holes in his game. We all love to see the big rebounds and the assists, and he's got triple doubles. But what I want to see out of him is like a 1.5 steals a game. He's long. He's rangy. Like, I want to see steals. I want to see him some defensive stats. I don't want to see 0.5. I don't want to see 0.7. I mean, look, fair enough. If you get a block a game as a big guy, as a big guard, great. But I want to see 1.5 steals out of him. If he can up it to that, then I'd be taking Giddey if he's falling next season and be very happy with where I am. But as it stands, for the ADP of 56, I'd be looking around 100 and be like, oh, yeah, I can use him about here.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Matty. I think about 100 is about right. I think there is scope for him to improve with his steals. You have someone like J-Dub, who is, off the top of my head, top 5 for deflections in the league. Not all of those deflections are going to go to him, are going to go to SGA. Some are going to go to Giddey. So I would expect that to also improve over the next few years. Or perhaps maybe there's scope for, we don't like to carry on too much around trade rumors, but I know during the speculation, the off-court stuff, there was a lot of talk around his trade value as well. So who knows? Maybe he finds himself in a better spot without a couple of guns next to him.
Yeah, I do think a trade would be good for him. As much as I love like OKC and how good they are, he's almost the third wheel, fourth wheel, whatever you want to say now. And I'd love to see him on another team. I'd love to see him in San Antonio. I think him and Wemby could form a really nice pairing. But anyway,
talking about Wemby, great question by Life of Cuz in chat, by the way. Evening, fellas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's back. Life of Cuz. Evening, fellas. Tell me, do I have a chance of getting Wemby if I don't have the first or second pick in 9-cat head-to-head next season? No. And no, Cuz, I'm sorry.
I would say you have a chance, but not a good one. Not a good one. Depends who's in your league with you. I mean, I had my friend over here today coming to look at my computer, and we were talking, and he has the number 1 pick next year because he won the league that I split into 2. He won the bottom half division, which gets the number 1 pick next year. So we were talking about it, and I said, yeah, so you've got number 1. And he said, yeah, I think it's probably still Jokic, isn't it?
Yep.
I went, yep, sure. Maybe I get picked 2.
Still Jokic.
I think there's a chance that you get him, but I doubt you get him back without 1.
Okay, well, this is the question then. Okay, this is the question. Let's be honest. Okay, fine then. Let's just say Jokic is consensus number 1, because I even know when you did your research with the analyst, Kingy, you said, everyone was like, yeah, Jokic is still going to be the guy based on bets. Yeah. So I present to you, D-Mac, a question. I'm giving you the second pick next year. Who are you taking, Wemby or SGA?
Oh, I'm taking Wemby number 1, Matty. I think the upside is there. So
there you go.
To answer your question, he would go 2 if he's available at 2. But I'm taking him 1.
So this okay. So you've taken him number 1. Kingy, you have the second pick. Who are you taking second? Are you taking Jokic now, or are you going to take SGA?
Yeah, for me, that's a much tougher question.
Exactly. So this is where after number 1, if Wemby goes number 1, number 2 has got to be kicking themselves to be like, wait a second, I almost got we've talked. I think we spoke about this the last time we did the show, Kingy. How great is fantasy that the top 5 guys are really bloody good to base your team around?
Yeah,
like it's a lot of fun.
It's hard for me. I think it would come down to probably if I had an idea in my head of what build I was going to go, because Shea will get you more points and defensive stuff, where Jokic will get you the triple-double stats with not a lot of defense. Oh, I mean, he does get some defensive stats, but Shea, I think, leads the league in steals potentially, or he's at least top 3.
I think he's top.
I don't know. He's close to top.
He's tied top on the season with De'Aaron Fox actually, and at 2, and in front of that is Marcus Smart at 2.1, but in limited games, so it doesn't count.
He barely played. So I think I think you could make a case for either of them. I think Jokic is maybe slightly safer, but I'd probably go Shea just because I haven't had Shea before, and I think he's just more fun.
Yeah.
Well, Jokic will be 30 come next season.
Yep.
I don't think 30 necessarily means too much. Maybe it does for a big man, a bit more wear and tear, but you look at someone like LeBron who's almost 40 and he's still going strong as well. So, I would still be going Jokic, even though he is the number 3 ranked per game player this season. SGA number 1. SGA 1? SGA 2. Embiid 1, or vice versa.
Embiid's 1 per game, but obviously only played 40 games or something, 39.
Right.
So
here's a bit of a random question, just because we were I just sorted through the steal stats. Who do you think is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th ranked player for steals on the season? Randomly. Silly season.
Right.
One of my favorite silly seasons.
Oh, well, it'd be if it's a silly season.
I'm going Scottie Pippen Jr. I don't have any.
Yes. No, you're right. You're bang on Scottie Pippen Jr.
Right.
Scottie Pippen Jr. Yeah. He's crept into the 6th place for the season at 1.8 steals a game.
That's crazy. Yes.
Well, that would be a segue into our next topic, but we'll just quickly run through your names, Matty, of who you had as our per game total value players.
I actually did. So this was one of my little favorite ones here. I did a story of 3 Hawks just based on per total and ADP for the season. So you could get a bit of a picture how it really shapes up at the end of the day. Because I really am interested by the Atlanta Hawks next season, and more so what does happen with the Atlanta Hawks next season and in the off season if there's any trades. So the most ballpark guy in the world was DeJounte Murray. So his ADP this year was 31st. His per game value was 38th on the season. His total games played value, especially with those ones with Trey out, which obviously bumped him, made him into 23rd. So he obviously has played himself into second, end of third round contention last year with where he was drafted. So with any bump, if you look at the total games value 23, that's much closer to his number, what he could probably represent in your fantasy leagues next year if he is the prime option there in Atlanta if Trey does get moved. Jalen Johnson, per game value, this was the interesting one for him because we all thought he was a darling of the fantasy season. Like, oh, look at this breakout guy. His ADP was 127. How good is he? Well, per game value, the bloke has been 45th on the season, which no one really saw coming, like busting into the top 50 and taking it by the manscapes. But his total games value with the injuries is 84th. So as much as we've loved him, holding him through those injuries has actually cost you a lot and bumped him down to the 84th. Whereas Trey Young was 15th on total games value with injuries. He has slipped to 86th on the season, just next to Jalen Johnson, basically. And his per game value was 35th. My absolute favorite, though, on the season, to show you how good he has been Chet Holmgren, whose ADP was 48 average. His per game value was 21, but he has played 80. So he's played 81 games, I think it was. Whatever his game value was, he is 8th on total games played on the season.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Insane. Yeah.
So for me, that's where it shows that next year, when we're talking about could he be a first round guy? Well, he has actually been a first round guy this year on total games played. So those were my interesting, because I thought it was really interesting to see where the Hawks shaped up with one guy who was really hot, one guy who's perennially been an end of a first round guy, and what's the potential for a guy to rise next year if one of those guys is traded. So I actually thought that was a really interesting one for them.
Yeah, I think the Hawks are an interesting team for next season because I think they have to make some moves. Otherwise, they're just going to be stuck in this zone that the Bulls have been in forever, of just being mediocre, play-in, borderline playoff team, but nothing more. Because they've got pieces there that they can either utilize as trade chips or keep them build around. Like they've got a few different directions they can go in. So I think they need to capitalize on the situation that they're in before they sort of dig that hole too deep, like the Bulls have done a little bit with the Vucevic contract and that sort of thing. So, I like the Hawks. And Chet, I think he'll be borderline first round next year, I think. And
that's the funny thing of all these guys on total game value. And this is the crazy thing as well. He has played the most games out of all of them in the first round on total games value. The next closest is Jokic at 78 games, and he's the second base player. But then you guys got like Kawhi on 68 games, and he's still the fifth, which is just insane.
Yeah, I'd say Anthony Davis must be top 3 in per.
He is 3 with a bullet on 75 games played. Number 1 is Shea at 74.
Yeah.
And guys, this is such an interesting exercise because generally speaking, we'll go into draft season thinking, we'll look at the average. We'll look at the per game average and go, all right, this is how I'm going to base my selections for next season. Not thinking about totals because I guess totals are sometimes or often very difficult to predict. Injuries, you just don't know what's going to happen. But I think you do need to consider that, particularly with guys that do tend to be injury prone. And I don't like to use that term loosely, but there are guys that are injury prone that you tend to stay away from or drop down a few levels as well. But great exercise that we're doing.
Yeah. And it is, as you said, totals are hard because you can't project injuries. So it's just impossible. But I think people can go too far the other way. And so I think you need to just sometimes have a little bit more fun. Like don't lean away from the injury prone players. Because, I mean, Chet missed all of last year with an injury. And as you said, he's played 81 games this year. So there are these guys that are Anthony Davis. I'm not drafting him. He always gets injured. If you look at the top 12 this year per game, there's maybe 3 players that have played more than 70 games, and Anthony Davis is one of them.
Yeah, you got
So
Shea at 7. You got Shea at 74. So this is 1 through 12. SGA at 74. Jokic at 78. AD 75. Luka 70. Kawhi 68. Wembanyama 71. PG 74. Chetty at 81. Then KD and Tatum both on 74. Tyrese at 68. And Fred VanVleet, funnily enough, rounds out your top 12 of total game value at number 12 with at 73 games played.
And you think about some of those guys like Kawhi and AD, unders and overs of games played, let's say under over 55 games played, you would have got great odds on Kawhi playing 68 up to now.
There's 100%. A ton of guys like KD, another one, like quietly,
KD
who's played over 70 games. Fred VanVleet. So I just think that's people do tend to lean into that narrative a little bit too much of, no, he's always injured. If you like a guy, just go with him. If you like Anthony Davis, just pick him. If he gets injured, it sucks, but it happens.
You don't know when guys are going to get injured. Look, this season has been ridiculous for injuries. It's been like, I think we've all had it across most of our leagues. There's just the adductor strains, the niggles, the cold. I've seen more cold and flus pop up on the injury report this year than I ever have in my entire life. It's been nuts.
And something that I want to analyze as part of my show as well, thinking about just the silly season and just the shenanigans that's going on, do we take that into account when we're in draft season? I think we need to. Some of these real bad teams that we know will be bad again, we're going to see it again over and over. We've seen it with Portland and guys like Jeremy Grant. We're going to see it all the time.
This is where you need to message your commissioner right now. And this is why you shouldn't be playing to week 24, D-Mac. You shouldn't be doing it right now. It's just, it feels obscene to think that your season that you put 23 and a half weeks of hard work into could come down to one Kenneth Lofton Jr. derailing it.
The merits of Roto, I guess.
The merit of Roto. This is it.
So we'll do this quick question and then we'll just quickly get into our final topic. The whole idea of third round reversal to combat Jokic's dominance. I mean, the idea of third round reversal has been around for a while, but probably has been discussed a little bit more with Jokic being the clear sort of number one player for the last 4 to 5 years. With Wemby now, and I think Shea, does this gain more momentum, the discussion of third round reversal? I think it certainly does. But for me, and I posted something on Twitter, it wasn't a post. I think I commented on something that Dr. A put up. I think you have to consider auction drafts. I think it is just going to make it a lot fairer because whoever wants to get Wemby is going to have to pay big to get him next year. So I think that is possibly the fairest way. If you obviously auction drafts are a little bit trickier because they need to be done usually as a live fast draft. You can't really do it as a slow draft as well. So it's not for everyone, but I certainly think that if you're in a league and you're just looking ahead to next season and wondering how good Wemby might be and whether whoever gets the first pick has a clear advantage, I'd definitely consider third round reversal if you're going to stick with a snake draft. But if you're open to the idea of auction draft, I'd do. And auctions are awesome. Like, I love auction drafts.
Yeah, they are a lot of fun, and I think they are a lot fairer to do, but a lot more time consuming, as you said, Kingy. Yeah. Third round reversal, particularly in deeper leagues, 12 teamers, perhaps. Yeah, as you said, with these three guys. Yeah, perhaps in shallower leagues, probably not. But yeah, definitely in deeper leagues, I think it's definitely worth considering.
I think it's definitely a consideration, though. I won an 11 cat league this year, and I had the 17th pick, and it's 20 men deep. And my first two picks off the board were Kawhi and Kyrie. And I got one triple-double my entire season. Thank you, Kawhi. And you never know how it's going to go. So I think when we put the emphasis on putting our whole season on one or two guys, it speaks to a good foundation. But I like to think of every single player you draft at the end of the day as helping to build that foundation higher and higher, and to make sure that you lock down that category. So yeah, Victor can win you blocks. Cool. Well, then you need to change tact and tact on that, and maybe not attack blocks. because that be a fool's errand, because they might pick up Daniel Gafford in like the 4th round or the 5th round and get another guy who's deep and then have like 12 blocks a game out of their ass. And you're never going to be able to beat that. So you need to look at other ways. But that being said, what's the hole in those games? Well, Victor Wembanyama's field goal percentage. So you're going to have to build around field goal percentage and free throw percentage to get those back. So you have to think tactically. I think it's definitely a consideration for 3rd round reversal. But Cuz, have a look around at leagues. And I don't know about you, D-Mac, who was your number 1 pick and who was your opponent's number 1 pick in the final week?
Number one pick. Well, right now in the tournament, my number 1 pick, this is a keeper league. I picked up Wemby. That was my number 1. But I also kept a few other guys from last season, Halliburton as well. So I've got a very strong team. I'm going up against Jokic as well. So
there you go.
2 dominant teams with dominant players. It does definitely help and sets you up nicely. There's probably 100%. Less skill in trying to win the league from that position than there is getting a Kawhi at 17 and a Kyrie. Getting Kyrie 18 as well. That's very nice.
I got him back on the turn. So I got him at 7. I got him back on the turn. I think it was like pick 23, 24.
Well, that's some great value there. But yeah, there's probably a lot more pride and a lot more skill involved in trying to win in that position. But
luck on the season.
A little bit of luck as well.
It's fantasy. It's got a lot of luck is involved.
Sometimes, yes.
So we do have another topic, but we're at an hour. So I'm wondering whether we just call it and give us something to talk about next week, because there's going to be not much happening.
Maybe. I think that was an awesome exercise. I mean, I think we could talk shit on this all night long, because you look through it, man. I don't know about you boys, but when you look down this way and you see guys like, I know Jalen Green was initially on your list as well, Kingy. And I looked at Jalen Green and everyone's like, oh, how good is Jalen Green? Oh, fuck, isn't he great? Well, okay. Well, his ADP was 81. His total value still on the season is 93 and his per game value is still 145.
Yeah.
But also recency bias. He's been amazing since Şengün's gone down as well.
And no Şengün. I think that's the big one here, is that there's a pretty clear correlation between his uptick and the fact that Şengün hasn't been playing at all. So that's no coincidence. But I think, people are going to remember how good was Jalen Green down the stretch. Next season, he'll be drafted at 50, 55.
Yeah, that's I'm thinking the same. That would be my prediction. ADP
and I think
around
he'll be good. I mean, he's a good player. Like we know what he can do, but we have a much bigger sample size of him being a top 100, top 120 player than we do him being a top 30 player. So, I feel like he will probably be someone that I have 0 shares in next year. We'll see.
I think it's
Life of Cuz, number 1 picks in the final, Jokic and Shea. There you go. No surprise.
So I think it's how you build your teams out. I mean, those guys obviously, like you said, D-Mac, give you a real advantage. They're incredible. Like, they're obviously the 2 best players in fantasy. Shea, 3rd best player in fantasy. They're going to get you there. But in a couple of my other leagues, I just had a quick look before, and I'm sure that the guy who won my personal league, he didn't have the number 1 pick. In fact, Skitty had the number 1 pick in our league, and he just missed the playoffs because of injuries to the rest of his team.
All right. Yeah.
So, it's all about where that goes. And it's so weird that you mentioned about that Jalen Green thing. On Basketball Monster, when you gave us this exercise, Kingy, I was like, oh, yeah, I'll look at the total value real quickly. Jalen Green didn't make the top players in the Basketball Monster list initially for total games value.
Yeah, I had to change that 180.
I had to change it to all players just to see Jalen Green.
Yeah. Yeah, he has obviously very good at certain things, but he has some pretty glaring holes in his fantasy game as well, which drag his overall value down. So
he does.
Look, I'm going to call it there, boys, I think, because we're at an hour, and if we move to this next topic, we could go who knows how long. And you have things to do. It's Saturday night, isn't it? Yeah, it is Saturday night.
It is Saturday night.
Yeah. So, D-Mac, what have you and Kayla got coming up over the next couple of weeks?
Yep. So we'll still continue with our Between Two Hoops show. We've got some review shows to be had. We'll do some similar exercises as well. We may even do the inverse and do per game value as opposed to totals, but perhaps we can talk about that next time as well. That'll be an interesting one as we start thinking about next season's drafts.
And Matty, insight, what's happening over there?
I'm hanging up the hat. I think we're done. I think we're done with the weekly shows. So it's going to change into new weekly shows because the season's done. So tomorrow night we would usually do the crossover, and that would be the weekly preview show for the next week. But there's no fantasy basketball
to preview.
To preview. So I think we're going to start up our recap shows. I'm going to do an ADP show. So I'm going to go and run through the top 150 ADPs to where they go. And I'm also going to do the top 150 review as well. So we're going to be I'll break that down into single lots. So I'll ask you boys, D-Mac, Kingy, come on. We're going to do shows down. I'm going to break down 25. And then we're going to start breaking down where these guys shape up for next one to start getting a bit of a picture. Also going to do some census polls. So I want to do a bit of polling to see who won your league with what pick. And just to get a bit of a consensus right now to see on this recency bias, does Jokic and Wemby mean you win? And let's just see those percentages. I'm really curious to see. So I'll be doing some of those shows in the coming weeks. We'll be doing recap shows over the course of the year. But for weekly content, our 4 shows a week will probably come down to 2 or 3 moving ahead for the rest of the year until previews.
Yes, look, similar for us. I mean, we'll continue to do it'll be Thursday night show, but maybe on a Thursday, maybe we'll change nights. So I don't know what the plan is there. But we'll still have that. I'll still have my show with Noah every week. I know he's going to be doing some recap shows, so am I. We have got our playoff leagues. We will have draft-only leagues starting as soon as the season is done. So that'll be mid-June, I want to say. Probably do some more mocks as well, just to get people's sort of mouths watering for next season. And I will be doing some analyst interviews as well. Both of you will be coming on for series 2 of the analyst interviews. I think I've got about 16 people. So be recording those over the next couple of months. So that'll be good. So still plenty of content coming out. It'll slow down, but it'll still be out there for any of you that are desperately seeking fantasy basketball for whatever reason.
Gotta fill that void.
That's right.
It's just talking hoops, and how great is to talk hoops this time of year, man? Fantasy season's wrapping up, but we watch it we're fans. We might be analysts, but we're just fans of the game that we love. And this is what all of this work comes down to. And we get to hang up the hats for the fantasy season. We get to actually enjoy the playoffs, and how good is that? Yeah.
And the play-in. I mean, the play-in tournament this year is going to be very cool. A lot of interesting matchups. And even look, as I said, the final day, which is Sunday in the US, Monday for us. It's going to be a lot of time spent in front of a screen watching games because there are some good ones with lots of implications in terms of seedings. So should be a good day. Thank you for coming on, boys. As always, we'd love it. Anyone watching, subscribe, thumbs up, all of that sort of stuff. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you consume your podcast content. I am at Adam King 91 on Twitter, at NBA Fantasy Bible on Twitter, and at NBA G Wiz on Twitter. Follow us. We'll continue to churn stuff out. What else is there to do over the next couple of months? Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time, catch up.
Hey, guys.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.